The 2023 French Open has arrived, and this time around, we have three big title contenders in Iga Swiatek, Aryna Sabalenka, and Elena Rybakina. Will those three fulfill their prophecies and go the furthest, or will we see a surprise champion lift the trophy in Paris? I'll analyze the draw, go over all the top early round matches and top storylines before predicting who I think will raise the trophy here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today. Quickly before getting into the draw, I want to mention a pretty big withdrawal, I guess, in Paula Badosa, who pulled out of the tournament due to a stress fracture in her spine. This is very unfortunate because Paula played so well coming into this tournament, just played well in Rome, Madrid, just everywhere, but unfortunately, once again, her body just could not catch up with her, and at this point, I hope she recovers and has a solid grass or end of the year hardcourt swing. Now, coming into this tournament, we have four relatively big clay title winners. First, Jabeur, who won the Charleston 500, then Iga won Stuttgart, and then Aryna and Elena took home the two 1,000 tournaments in Madrid and Rome. Even though she didn't win a 1,000, Iga probably had the best clay showing as she reached the finals of Madrid and she beat Aryna in that final in Stuttgart. Swiatek did injure her thigh against Rybakina during that Rome quarterfinal match, so there are some slight question marks surrounding her fitness, but I think she should be okay for this tournament. The world number one will open her title defense against Spanish woman Cristina Buxa, and she could then play Claire Liu in round 2, Maria Boskova in the 3rd round, Barbora Krejcikova in the 4th, Coco Gauff in the quarters, Elena Rybakina in the semis, and Aryna Sabalenka in the finals. Swiatek's draw looks very favorable, in my opinion, as I don't really see anyone in that first week that can cause her any true problems. Maria Boskova is her first projected seeded opponent, and though the Czech earned a nice victory over Coco Gauff last week in Rome, she lacks the weapons to do much damage against the pole. Looking down, things are a bit more interesting as we have a first round battle of the major champions in Victoria Azarenka and Bianca Andreescu. Neither woman is in great form at the moment as Bianca is still working her way back into form from that Miami Open injury, while Vika actually withdrew from Rome, that Rome 3rd round match, due to a right leg issue. I will lean more towards Vika taking that one as she does have slightly better form and prep coming into this tournament, but that one could go either way. Right below, I have unseeded Russian Anna Kalinskaya as a dangerous floater as she's had some solid results this clay swing, beating the likes of Rybakina, Azarenka, Kalinina, and Mertens. She did have to retire mid-match in Rome versus Elena due to her injury, but if she's healthy for Roland Garros, I could definitely see her beating either Vika or Bianca and making a solid run here. Then all the way at the bottom, 2021 champion Barbora Krejcikova looms, and I put her as a strong title contender because even though she hasn't played her best the past few months, she has the A game to beat just about anybody. A lot of Barbora's issues, in my opinion, stem from not having the opportunity to really go deep in tournaments due to some tough draws, as 4 of her last 5 losses came against Slam champions. This draw gives her the opportunity to play herself into form, and I do see her coming through here to face Iga in the 4th round. Should this match happen, it'd be very, very interesting because Barbora has won their last 2 affairs and she seems to really trouble the world number 1, game star wise. However, I just do not know if Krejcikova can elevate her level high enough against someone of Iga's caliber at the moment, which is why I'm having the pole advance to the quarterfinals. Coco Gauff's section is next, and at the top is Veronika Kudermetova once again, who has had a very good clay season as she made the semifinals of both Rome and Madrid. The Russian also made the quarterfinals here in Paris last year, so she's definitely comfortable with the conditions too. Veronika is projected to play Madison Keys in the 3rd round, who has an interesting opening round match against Kaia Kanepi, which is guaranteed to be a big babe tennis battle. Looking down, Rome finalist Annalena Kalinina is projected to meet Coco Gauff. Kalinina played phenomenal tennis in the Photo Italico, but she did retire during the 2nd set of her final with Rybakina, so injuries could be a factor there, preventing a deep run. Coco, meanwhile, has had a pretty dismal clay season so far, going 3-3. Coco also has a bit of pressure on her shoulders as she's defending finals points from her runner-up finish here in Paris back in 2022. Now, Coco also had a pretty subpar clay build-up last season, so she can take solace knowing that she likely plays her best tennis in Paris. Really, it's been a confidence issue with Coco the past few weeks, so I think this draw will get for the opportunity to regain that champion mentality and mindset. The American also brought on Patrick Moronoglu for this slam, so hopefully he can spark something in Coco and tweak that forehand a bit in the process. I think we will see an All-American 4th round matchup between Madison Keys and Coco Gauff, as Maddie has been quietly playing some solid tennis on the dirt and she can surely oust Kudermetova. Meanwhile, Kalinina's injury and overall health are a big factor for me here, which is why I'm sending Gauff through. Regardless of what happens though, I'm putting Keys through to the quarterfinals. I was very close to sending Coco through instead, especially because she seems to do well against Madison, but a gut feeling just tells me that Keys is due for another solid run here. Rome champion Elena Rybakina will start against qualified Brenda Fruhvirtova and could then play Lena Noskova in the second round, Shelby Rogers in the third, Beatrice Haddad-Maia in the fourth, Ons Jabeur in the quarters, Iga in the semis, and Aryna in the final. I think Elena's draw is very decent. Lena Noskova, she is a very talented player, but she's been struggling a lot with form, so I don't picture her being a big threat. I'm sure either Petra Martic or Shelby Rogers will be her third round opponent. Both are solid players, and Martic seems to elevate her level on clay. However, Elena should still make the second week without much drama. Then Ekaterina Alexandrova and Beatrice Haddad-Maia are projected to face off in the third round, which I think will happen, though both players have terrible track records in slams. Alexandrova's never made it to a second week at a major, while Haddad-Maia has never even made it to the third round. I think Bia will finally break that curse and make the second week, as she's been playing very solid tennis lately, coming so close to making the Rome semifinals. I think she could potentially cause problems for Rybakina should they play, as the Kazakh is probably most vulnerable in the earlier rounds of slams, but the fourth seed is still going to be my pick to advance to the quarterfinals. Ons Jabeur's section, to me, is going to be a bit messy when it's all said and done, as first Petra Kvitova has struggled a lot since winning Miami, recently pulling out of Rome due to a right foot problem. Then, although Jabeur won Charleston and made the semifinals in Stuttgart, she suffered a left calf injury there and fell in her opening round match in Rome to Badosa. I think Donna Vekic and Sorana Cirstea can surely shake things up here, as Vekic had a solid showing in Rome as she tested Iga a bit, while Cirstea is just always going to be a tough out, especially on the dirt. I do think Petra is in danger of a first round exit, as Cocciaretto is a tricky opponent, plus Petra has a lot of question marks surrounding her health. Ons is in much better shape, as her draw looks relatively favorable and she'll likely be able to play herself into form. Jabeur's opening round opponent though, Lucia Bronzetti, is riding high on confidence as she's currently in the finals of Rabat, though I think Jabeur should be okay as she'll be far more well rested. I will go ahead with Donna and Ons to meet in the fourth round, as Cirstea does have a testy opener against Jasmine Paolini, who just won a 125k in Florence. Between Ons and Donna, I'm going to pick the Tunisian to reach the Elite 8. Now, Maria Sakkari's section is very interesting, as the Greek woman has a brutal opener in Karolina Muchova, the same woman who beat her at Roland Garros last year. Sakkari has had a decent clay campaign, highlighted by a semifinal showing in Madrid. Muchova, meanwhile, made a solid push in Rome, winning 3 matches to make the round of 16. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Karolina yanked on Maria's bun yet again, but I think Maria will prevail here to make the second round. Irina Camelia Begu is a potential third round opponent, and the Romanian is dangerous on clay herself, making the Madrid quarters. Now, the bottom part of this section is pretty weak, as there's Magda Linette, who's not great on clay. Lila Fernandez likes the surface, but she's still trying to rediscover her top form. Belinda Bencic made the Charleston finals, but she hasn't played a match since then due to a hip injury. If she's healthy, I think she can still at least make the third round, as her draw looks pretty favorable. Just like with Ons, this draw is pretty wide open, and I can see quite a few players coming through to make it through the quarterfinals. I think this section is relatively weak though, as I don't really see any women here contending for the title or lifting the trophy. Third seed Jessica Pegula has a difficult projected path to the title, opening against compatriot Danielle Collins before potentially playing Camila Giorgi, Elise Mertens, Ludmila Samsonova, Maria Sakkari, Aryna Sabalenka, and Iga. Jessica's section does look a bit tricky as she first plays Danielle Collins, who is a major finalist, and she's reached the French quarters back in 2020. However, like she typically does, Collins hasn't played a lot of tennis leading up to the slam, with her last match being at the Charleston Open. She also played Pegula in the Miami Open, losing in straight sets. Pegula, meanwhile, made the French Open quarters last year and had a solid clay swing thus far, making the semifinals in Charleston and the quarters of Madrid. She did lose early in Rome to Taylor Townsend, and while her draw looks a bit tricky here in this first week, we have to remember that Jessica rises to the occasion when a slam rolls around. She did lose early in Rome to Taylor Townsend, and while her draw looks a bit tricky here in this first week, we have to remember that Jessica Pegula rises to the occasion when a slam rolls around. I think she'll make it to the fourth round where I have her playing Anastasia Potapova. Ludmila Samsonova is ranked higher than she, but Samsung is another player who struggles with bringing her top form to a major. Plus, she has severe choking problems. Mayar Sharif is there too, and the Egyptian has had a solid showing on the dirt this season herself, making the Madrid quarterfinals. Focusing back on this section overall, I'm going to go out on a limb and have Potapova making the quarterfinals. Potapova definitely has the game to beat the American, as she quite frankly should have won their Indian Wells and Miami Open affairs, but I think the third time would be the charm for the 22-year-old. Next, 5th seed Caroline Garcia has a decent draw, but she still might find a way to F it up. I think her opener against Shi Wang could be difficult, as the Chinese woman has some good form coming off a fourth round appearance in Rome. Garcia has been struggling really all season and definitely isn't playing with the same confidence that she had throughout the second half of 2022. Carol seems to play relatively well in front of her home crowd though, so maybe she can rely on them to make a solid run, because she'll need all the help she can get. Caro is projected to face Martina Trevisan in the third round, and the Italian made the semis here last year. She gets Elena Svitolina in the first round, who's still on the comeback trail after giving birth last year. Svitolina, by the way, is doing very well as she's currently in the final of Strasbourg. 2017 champion Elena Ostapenko is at the bottom portion of this section, and I put her as a strong title contender because, as she showed 6 years ago, she has the game to lift the big trophy. Ostapenko is also coming to Paris with some confidence under her belt as she reached the Rome semifinals. Now, there are a few dangerous floaters looming here. First, American Peyton Stearns, who's impressed me with her game this week in Rabat. She gets Katerina Siniakova, who's a tough out herself, though she's coming back from a wrist injury. Then there's Marketa Vondrousova, who's a former finalist here, and she always seems to excel on the surface. She plays Alicia Parks, who's a very talented player, but lacks the consistency to make noise at a slam right now. 9th seed Daria Kasatkina is at the bottom, and she typically does very well on clay, making the semifinals in Paris last year. However, I see Vondrousova taking her out here and meeting Yelena in the third round. Now, Ostapenko is very vulnerable in the early rounds of slams, so I'm wary of having her go deep here, but I will stick with the Latvian to make it out this section to reach the quarters of yet another slam. 2nd seed Aryna Sabalenka will play Marta Kostyuk in the opening round, and she could then meet Pana Udvardi in the second round, Shuai Zhang in the third, Karolina Pliskova in the fourth, Caroline Garcia in the quarters, Jessica Pegula in the semis, and Iga Swiatek in the finals. At the top of this section, Karolina Pliskova and Sloane Stephens are due to square off, and this is probably going to be the biggest popcorn match of the tournament right now. I'm leaning more towards Sloane pulling through there to take the quote-unquote upset, as she's been performing well right now on clay, as she won a 125K a few weeks ago, plus she made the semifinals of Rabat. Sloane and Carolina actually played one another at the French 2 years ago, and the American won that match. Sloane typically does well here in Paris. She was a finalist in 2018, and she reached the quarterfinals last year. Qinwen Zheng is another dangerous floater, and she broke through here and made the second week last year, being the only woman to take a set off of Iga during her title run. Aryna Sabalenka has a decent draw herself, though that opening round against Marta can be tricky. Kostyuk is a solid player, but the Ukrainian has struggled since winning her maiden tour title in Texas a few months back. Aside from that, I don't really see any major threats for Sabalenka here. I honestly think Aryna had the perfect prep for Roland Garros, coming in with some deep runs in Madrid and Stuttgart. She did fall in her opening round match in Rome versus Sonia Kenin, but I think this will help her in the end, as she'll be fresher and more rested for a deep run. Qinwen Zheng to me is her biggest threat here, as Sloane doesn't really know how to be a top player right now. Plus, Carolina is a bit of an unknown. Still, the Belarusian should be the favorite to make it through there, which I think she will. Looking at the projected quarterfinals, Iga would take on Coco Gauff, Elena on, Sakkari against Pegula, and then Garcia against Sabalenka. Now for my predictions, I have Iga taking on Madison Keys, Elena against Ons, Pegula against Potapova, and Ostapenko against Sabalenka. I will have all big three players advance to the semifinals. Then I have number 1 versus number 2, Iga and Aryna squaring off once again, with Swiatek taking the title. As I said before, I don't really see anyone really troubling Iga in the earlier rounds besides Jabeur Krejcikova, who really can beat Iga if she's on her game, but if both women are on or playing their A-level tennis, I'd go with a Polish woman. There are some question marks, small question marks with Iga's fitness, as I mentioned earlier with that thigh injury, but I think she'll be just fine overall. Rybakina is going to be a tough out should they play, but Iga was dominating their Rome match before she choked a bit towards the end. I think that she would get the job done this time around, especially with everything that's on the line and that huge chip being on her shoulder. Looking at the bottom, Sakkari and Garcia could potentially go deep, but they have to bring their A games to do so. Pegula to me still doesn't really have what it takes to go all the way in the slam, but Sabalenka does, which is why I'm having her progress through to the final. My only concern with her is that opening round match against Kostyuk and potentially Chinwin, but I think this should be okay. Iga will feel a different pressure at Roland Garros this time around compared to last season, as she's still going to be the favorite, but the gap is much smaller with the ascent of Sabalenka and Rybakina. As I keep mentioning, both Aryna and Elena have big titles to their name this season, being 1000s and above, while Iga just has 500s. She's going to be very, very eager to prove herself and re-solidify herself as the top woman on tour. Swiatek's world number 1 ranking is also under siege, as the poll will lose her top spot should she fail to reach the quarterfinals. If Aryna reaches the 4th round, Iga would have to make the semifinals to stay in world number 1. If Aryna makes the semis, Iga would need to make the final, and if Sabalenka made the final, Iga would need to win it all. Now that's all for my preview, and let me know in the comments whether you agree with my prediction of Iga winning her 3rd Roland Garros title, or if you think another player will reign supreme. Also, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post the men's preview. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today.